My girlfriend Jenna and I have been together for a little over 2 years now. It's hard to believe how much time has passed since we first met. I'm a veterinarian, and our story begins at my office. She had just moved to the city and brought her dog in for an ear infection. I remember that day clearly. It started like any other workday, but it ended up changing my life forever. What was supposed to be a quick 15-minute appointment turned into an hour-long conversation that neither of us wanted to end. We talked about everything: life, our backgrounds, our interests. I'd never felt that kind of connection with anyone before, and I'm sure she felt the same. Before Jenna, I lived the bachelor lifestyle. I'd been in and out of casual flings, never really finding anything that made me feel like I was truly invested. Honestly, I was starting to believe that I was just meant to stay single. It wasn't a bad life, but it felt empty. Every day felt like a cycle of meaningless encounters that left me craving something more substantial. Then I met Jenna, and everything changed. She's a charismatic woman, full of life, and she has a massive circle of friends. One of them is a guy named Dylan, who she's known since she lived in her hometown. She's reassured me many times that their relationship is purely platonic and that they've never been anything more than close friends. I trust her, but I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't a little uneasy about the dynamic between them. I know it's not rational to feel threatened by a guy who's just her friend, but I couldn't help it. Jenna and Dylan have this bond that goes back years, and I can't deny that it sometimes makes me feel like I'm the outsider. He's visited us in the city 3 times, and while I've made an effort to get to know him, he's never seemed to warm up to me. Jenna insists that he's just protective of her, but to me, it always felt more like jealousy than genuine concern. Regardless, I've tried to be understanding, and I've kept my thoughts to myself. I don't want to seem insecure, so I've just let it be. This year, Jenna finished up grad school, and although she was excited about it, she had a tough time finding a job. We've been living together for about a year now, and while I've been able to cover all the rent and expenses on my own without issue, I didn't want to become a crutch for her. I believe that everyone should have their own financial independence, and while I didn't want to rush her, I made it clear that I'd like her to contribute once she found a job. I was really proud of her when she texted me at work on Monday to tell me that she'd landed a job she really wanted. She had to go through some pretty grueling interviews to get it, and I could tell how much it meant to her. I was so happy for her that I decided to surprise her by leaving work early. Without telling her, I went out and bought a few things to celebrate: her favorite booze, a bunch of Chinese takeout, and flowers. I even bought her a necklace I'd seen her eyeing a couple of weeks earlier. It wasn't too extravagant, but it was something I thought she'd love. The necklace had a shark on it, and anyone who knows Jenna knows she's obsessed with sharks. I decided to keep the necklace hidden in the basement, intending to surprise her when I came home. I snuck in through the side entrance, went down to the basement, and grabbed the necklace, planning to surprise her by coming up the basement steps. As I was heading up, I could hear her talking on the phone. Normally, I wouldn't stop and eavesdrop, but I couldn't help but overhear her laughing. It was a full belly laugh, the kind that's contagious and cute. I figured I'd wait until she was off the phone before I surprised her. As I stood there waiting, I realized that she was talking to Dylan. Nothing new there, they talk on the phone at least once a week. What bothered me was what they were laughing about. As I listened more closely, I realized they were making fun of me. Specifically, they were laughing about our sex life. Jenna said something about how I couldn't even compare to her ex-boyfriend, saying that he had at least 3 inches on me. She went on to say that it was traumatic for her to eat baby carrots in front of me because it reminded her of my, in her words, tiny size. It was humiliating. Now, I don't really care about what strangers on the internet might think about my physical appearance or anything, but this was different. What she was saying wasn't even true. I'm not huge, but I'm definitely not laughable. I've always been secure about who I am, and this was just hurtful beyond measure. I've never felt so humiliated in my life. To make matters worse, she continued to joke about how I was gorgeous but not very smart. That stung, not because I care about her opinion of my intelligence. I know I'm well educated and capable, but because it felt like an attack on my character. It wasn't just a harmless joke between friends, it was cruel. I'm a guy who's always tried to be understanding, and I'd never dream of making fun of someone I love, let alone talking about them in such a degrading way to another person. At that moment, I just couldn't take it anymore. I left the house. Did I throw the flowers out of my car window? Yes. Did I cry in a parking lot? Yes, I did. I think she may have heard me leave, though, because she started texting me almost immediately, asking when I was coming home. I didn't respond to her texts, and I haven't mentioned what I overheard yet. It's been a few days, and I'm still processing everything. It's so painful and embarrassing. But at the same time, I know this relationship might be over. I have been planning to propose to her in a few months, but now I don't know how I could ever look at her the same way again. I'm devastated. I know I need to bring it up to her eventually, but I'm not sure how. It's just so hard. I'm not angry. I'm just heartbroken. How do I confront her about something like this without it turning into an argument? I'm still not sure what to do, but I know one thing. This hurt goes way deeper than I expected. Update. I've been thinking about everything for the past couple days. I've talked to a few of my friends and family, and they've all told me that I should break up with her. It's been a tough decision, but I'm convinced it's the right one. I even called my mom and told her everything. I've never heard her so angry in my life. She didn't know what to say, except that I deserve better. After a lot of contemplation, I decided to do it. I broke up with Jenna Thursday evening. It wasn't easy. I took her to a wine bar in downtown, a place with little private booths. I wanted it to be calm, but still public enough to avoid any potential drama or manipulation. She had been acting really sweet all week, which only made things harder for me. I could tell she was clueless about what was coming. She dressed up, looked stunning, and was extra affectionate. She kept making flirty comments, talking about things she wanted to do to me later. Normally, that would have made me feel good, but this time it felt wrong. It felt hollow. I had rehearsed everything I wanted to say over and over. I started by telling her how much I loved her, how she was the first woman I ever thought about marrying, how I'd even looked at rings. I didn't tell her that I'd already bought one, though. I wanted her to understand how deeply I'd cared for her. Then, I asked her the question that had been burning in my mind. Why, if you love me so much, would you make fun of me to Dylan? Her reaction was exactly what I expected. She denied everything, saying she never said anything like that. She claimed Dylan knew how much she loved me and that she'd never make fun of me to him. I pressed her further, saying that I'd overheard the conversation myself. She continued to deny it, but it was clear she was lying. Her face said it all. She tried to convince me that she had no issue with our sex life or with me in general, but her words couldn't undo the damage. At that point, I told her I was done. I couldn't continue in a relationship where I felt so disrespected. She pleaded with me, but my mind was made up. I drove her home so she could grab her things, and my brother and his girlfriend were there to witness everything. I wanted to make sure everything went smoothly, and I didn't want things to escalate. Jenna was in shock. She couldn't believe I was actually ending things. She asked where she was supposed to go and where she would sleep. I told her it wasn't my problem anymore and that she could figure it out. She begged me to reconsider, but there was no turning back. The tears came next, but they didn't have the effect she probably hoped for. After everything she'd said, I couldn't be moved by her tears. In the end, I had to kick her out of my house. The only furniture she'd contributed to the place was some decor that she paid for, but everything else was mine. She had no claim to anything. The following days were a whirlwind of texts from her, each one more angry and desperate than the last. I blocked her on everything, but she kept texting. Finally, I received a message from her saying all sorts of horrible things, calling me a loser, an idiot, and a bunch of other insults. At first, I didn't respond, but then she went too far. She smashed up my house, destroyed my furniture, and even ruined my car. She trashed everything in sight. I was beyond furious, but I tried not to let it consume me. I wasn't going to let her destruction tear me down. In a moment of angry pettiness, I ordered 100 pounds of baby carrots and had them delivered to her friend's place. It wasn't my proudest moment, but I needed to express how hurt I was. I've moved on now, but I'm still processing everything. I know it was the right choice to end things, but it's not easy. I've been reflecting on my role in the relationship too, trying to figure out if I could have done things differently. I don't think I could have. I gave her my heart, and she shattered it. Update. The days after I ended things with Jenna felt like a surreal blur. I was in shock, but also strangely relieved. I had made the right decision, and yet it hurt more than I could have ever imagined. Letting go of someone you thought you'd spend the rest of your life with isn't easy. And though I knew I had been disrespected, part of me still wondered if I'd done something wrong, if I had missed some subtle sign that could have spared me this heartbreak. Jenna's texts became more desperate with each passing day. Her messages were a mixture of anger, confusion, and, at times, pleading. I had blocked her on everything after the initial barrage of texts, but she didn't stop. One evening, I received a strange text from her. It wasn't angry or desperate, just a simple, almost sad message: "I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I hope you can forgive me." At first, I thought it was just another attempt to manipulate me into feeling guilty, but something about the tone struck me differently. Still, I ignored it, unable to bring myself to respond. I wasn't going to let her back in. It was too late for apologies. What she'd done to me was unforgivable, and no amount of regret could change that. A few weeks passed, and life started to feel normal again. I focused on work, spending my evenings with friends who supported me. I even found myself laughing again, something I hadn't done in months. But one evening, everything changed. I was at home when I received an unexpected call from my brother. He sounded shaken. "Hey, man, I just heard from Dylan. It's about Jenna," he said, his voice full of concern. I felt my heart sink into my stomach. "What happened? Is she okay?" "Not really, she had an accident." I froze, a cold feeling creeping up my spine. "What kind of accident?" She drove into a guardrail late last night. No one really knows why. She was drunk, and from what I've heard, it was pretty bad. The car flipped, and she didn't make it. She passed away in the hospital." The words felt like a punch to the gut. I sat down on the couch, trying to process what he was saying, but it didn't make sense. Jenna gone? The same woman who had been so full of life just weeks ago? It didn't seem real. I spent the next few hours and a days trying to understand what had happened. Dylan had told my brother that Jenna had been devastated after our breakup, and her life had spiraled out of control. She had tried to reach out to me several times, but I'd ignored her, pushing her further into isolation. According to Dylan, Jenna had been drinking heavily, trying to numb the pain of losing me, but her grief had overwhelmed her. It all came to a head that night when she got behind the wheel. I couldn't stop thinking about it. How had it all gone so wrong? I had never wished harm on her. All I'd ever wanted was to be respected and loved. She'd broken me, but I had never wanted her to suffer like this. I couldn't help but feel responsible, as if I had been part of the catalyst for her downward spiral. It was too much to bear. The guilt was overwhelming, crushing me from the inside. The funeral was small. There were only a handful of people, mostly her close friends and family. Dylan was there, of course, and as we stood together in the back of the small chapel, I could see the devastation in his eyes. He had always been protective of her, and in the end, it seemed he too had been powerless to stop her self-destructive behavior. As I watched the mourners and the somber atmosphere of the service, I couldn't help but reflect on everything that had led up to this moment. Jenna's love for me had been real, but somewhere along the way, it had become tainted by jealousy, insecurity, and the pressure of our differences. What had been a bright connection between us had become a broken relationship, filled with hurtful words and unhealed wounds. She hadn't been able to cope with losing me, and in the end, she lost everything. As the service came to an end and the mourners started to leave, I stood alone for a moment, gazing at her photo on the memorial table. She had always been the one to bring light into a room, and yet, she was gone, leaving behind only the shadows of what could have been. The reality of it all began to sink in. She had made her choices, and she had paid the ultimate price for them. I couldn't change what had happened, but I could learn from it. I realized that in the end, Jenna had been just as lost as I was. We were both searching for something: love, acceptance, validation, but neither of us had found the right way to truly heal and grow. Her tragic end was a stark reminder of how fragile our lives can be, how one mistake, one moment of weakness, can alter everything. In the weeks that followed, I tried to find peace. I took some time off work, traveled a little, and spent more time with the people who truly cared about me. I couldn't escape the sorrow that still lingered, but I knew I had to keep moving forward. Jenna's death was a lesson, one I would carry with me forever. That relationships, love, and life itself should never be taken for granted, and that it's important to always seek growth, healing, and respect for ourselves and for others. I wasn't sure how to feel about her now. On one hand, I couldn't forget the hurt she had caused me. But on the other, I felt a deep sadness, knowing that she had never found the peace she was searching for. In the end, Jenna's life had been a tragic tale of love gone wrong, and it was a story that would haunt me for a long time. But I had to let go of the guilt. It wasn't my fault. She had made her own choices. And as time passed, I slowly learned to forgive, not her necessarily, but myself. I could never change the past, but I could control how I moved forward, and I chose to do so with a heart that had healed, albeit a little scarred. Jenna's story ended in tragedy, but it was a reminder that sometimes the things we love most can also be the things that hurt us the most. It was a sad and painful ending, but in the aftermath, I found a way to begin again. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe and hit notification bell to stay updated.